Hey guys, what is going on? Matt Smith here as always. Thanks for watching the channel. Before I get rolling, like and subscribe. Then scroll right in the comments and hype me up. Just need a little hype sometimes. 37-20 Colorado over Wyoming tonight. The Buffs claw back to 500 at 2-2. Important game to build confidence and get this thing on track. And the most important question coming into this game, how would Kaidon Salter perform after regaining the job reportedly? We expected this to be coming. I think it was the right decision to go back to Kaidon, and clearly that proved to be the case tonight. Kaidon Salter in the first half, really productive, throwing the football, and that's what we needed to see. Quarterback playing quarterback. He was much more decisive with when to tuck and go. I felt like offensively they kept things rather simple for him, and he showed some much better accuracy tonight, which was probably the biggest concern after his first two appearances. Just a little off on some of those throws the first two, and tonight really did a good job putting touch on the football. I thought patient with it, did a good job creating. He got some good protection from his offensive line tonight. Certainly, considering quality of opponent, the first thing we have to ask is, okay, what do you take away from a game like this? And heading into it, defensively, there wasn't much stock I was going to put into this game unless for some reason they absolutely, got gashed by Wyoming, because Wyoming's offense, quite frankly, is very anemic. I even thought in the second half tonight, Colorado's defense made Wyoming's offense look pretty solid. And even Coach Prime was not happy with the finish to that game. For a while there in the second half, Wyoming was outscoring Colorado 17-9 over the course of the second half. So a very, very productive first half, very successful first half. Things didn't quite carry over. However, overall, this is one, and this is a season where you've got to celebrate the wins along the way and hope that you can learn along the way. I think there may have been some optimism that Colorado was going to be able to stumble somewhat through the first two games of the season and kind of pick things up on the fly, and clearly that was not the case. They got back to the drawing board this week. I thought Coach Prime had a fantastic practice plan, something that I talked to you guys about after the Houston game. Got to find a way to get yourself into second and manageable and third and short situations. Buffs did a better job, again, quality of opponent thing, but what I did want to see was this team be able to put some points on this Wyoming defense, because look, I mean, Wyoming's not a good football team, but their defense is certainly better than their offense, and they're a scrappy unit, right? They're a scrappy bunch. They don't really quit, as evidenced tonight. I mean, they fought till the bitter end, even when this game was kind of out of reach there at a 3-score margin. But it was impressive for me, even though it was Wyoming, to see Kaidon Salter be able to make some of those intermediate level throws, the second level, right? Be able to be efficient with the quick game. He even had a couple of drops tonight he dealt with, but I thought overall that's what you need out of the quarterback position. Now, there's a lot more he can get better at. He spoke about it afterwards, and one thing that we were wondering is whether or not his benching would kind of be a little bit of a fire under his ass, get going a little bit, be a motivating factor, and it definitely turned out to be the case. Coach Prime said it was a week of accountability. That's what he preached all week long. Everybody being accountable to each other, coaches being accountable to each other, and I think he covered up a lot in saying to us tonight that there's stuff behind the scenes that we're not privy to that certainly played a factor in all of this decision making. So either way, the net result is a motivated Kaidon Salter, and I asked him about that specifically after the game. Like, what were your conversations like with Coach Prime? Because Coach Prime is, as real as it gets with his guys. He keeps it 100 with you. I mean, he's not going to lie to you. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to tell you, just straight up exactly what the situation is. And Kaidon said that last week, obviously, he was disappointed, and it was very tough for him losing his job, but Coach Prime came back to him and was very frank with him again this week about getting the job back. And, it definitely is a competitor. There was a different version of Kaidon Salter on the field tonight than we saw the first two games. And I had some people reaching out to me, they should have started him against Houston. Maybe, and maybe that whole experiment, wasn't necessary. I think there could be an argument for that. However, here you are, so what do you do with it now? And as the competitor as he is, he raised his level of play. Now again, against Wyoming, but if there was anybody who was going to get a lot out of tonight's game, certainly if they showed up ready to go, it was Kaidon Salter. And I thought he did what he needed to do tonight, enough so where you're more comfortable heading into next week, no matter what. I mean, if for some reason, it didn't look the way it looked tonight from him, then I think next week it would be a little bit of a concern going, oh boy, we might have been back to that. But now that position, everybody around here can take a deep breath knowing that, okay, we know who QB1 is, now we can move forward. And certainly there is a gauntlet coming up with BYU, TCU, Iowa State, and Utah, and then of course Arizona, West Virginia, Arizona State, and Kansas State. But these next four, man, they're not going to be easy. They're not going to be easy. We all know what that BYU program is capable of after we saw them in the Alamo Bowl. Very different team. They won tonight over East Carolina, 34-13. Didn't look like a juggernaut at any point in that game. I feel much better heading into that game based upon Colorado's offensive performance tonight, that they're going to be able to move the football, because there were times over those first couple of weeks there where you started just getting a little bit nervous there that it was just going to be a little bit like pulling teeth moving the football at times this year. And if Kaidon Salter can be more consistent and show that leadership that Coach Prime was asking from the quarterback position, which I think he did tonight on both fronts, quite frankly. Even after Micah Welch fumbled on the long 44-yard run in the second half, Salter went up to him, and I was watching him from the crow's nest up there through binoculars. He went up to him, you know, as everybody did, kind of supported Micah, but also let Micah know that the reason that happened is because he's swinging his arms too much when he's running. And, you know, I think it was a little bit of tough love, but also some leadership and being comfortable enough with your teammates to go to them in a moment like that and share a word of support and also, you know, a word of encouragement and let them know that you expect more from them, because that's accountability, right? That's how you show accountability to each other, to your teammates. So I think those traits are maybe not as natural for Kaidon as for some other people, but I think that he's learning and getting better with it. And certainly, I mean, you can't make any other argument than, you know, starting him gives you the best chance to win, and clearly that will be what happens moving forward. Coach Prime, very proud of his performance tonight, knows that there was some stuff that he could clean up on, but at the same time, I think considering maybe some of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to, considering the performance tonight, I think everybody's very pleased with where they arrived with that position. Now, offensive line, I thought they did a really nice job providing a lot of time to throw tonight. And, you know, there have been a lot of people who have been getting at me about, hey, man, you know, statistically, their time to throw is one of the best in the country that they're allowing right now. And, you know, there's some of that. Coach Prime even said this week, we just got to do it. Like, he expected a whole nother level of play from those guys. Well, tonight, the depth of that group really showed, because you lost Jordan Seaton at halftime and you lost Zy Chrysler about halfway into the third quarter, which obviously is a concern. And Coach Prime said he hopes that nobody will be out multiple weeks. Sounds like maybe some of those guys might end up missing next week. We'll see. Probably won't get much of an update, but there will be an injury report next week because it is a Big 12 game, so we'll be able to see a little bit ahead of time, you know, what that's looking like. But they're down on both sides of the trenches right now. So not only did Chrysler go down, Yaya Atia replaced him. Thought he did a nice job in limited opportunities. That's a little easier to tell after watching the film, but he didn't really stick out as a negative to me, which is always a good thing. And then Kareem Harden came in and played left tackle for the second half, and I thought he did a nice job. Now, obviously, that's a position that you're going to be uncomfortable with moving forward into the games that you have the next couple of weeks if that guy's not Jordan Seaton lining up next weekend against BYU. However, you play the cards that you're dealt, and right now that's what Colorado's having to deal with. Now, defensive line is also a challenge. Brandon Davis-Swain missed tonight. Tawfiq Thomas missed tonight, both with injuries. Coming into this game, it looked like Anquin Barnes had also nicked up his right hand either in the game last week or in practice this week. He had a bit of a club on the right hand, and then in the second half, he was ejected for targeting, which I didn't get a great chance to watch a replay of that. Sounds like technically letter of the law was the right call. Very unfortunate that he will have to miss the first half of the BYU game. If he had been ejected in the first half, he would have had to only miss the second half tonight, but it was the second half, so he will have to sit the first half against BYU, which is obviously a bit of a concern considering you're already a little thinner at that position. They did have Quincy Wiggins put his hand in the ground a little bit tonight, I think, numbers-wise to make up for that, but Anquin Barnes is your number one defensive lineman, so obviously not ideal, especially when you look at a team like BYU who can really run the football and make you miss, and you got to be stout at the point of attack defensively. So that is a little bit of a concern. Linebacker, they didn't really rotate tonight. It was all Martavius French and Reggie Hughes. Better, as I called that room an abject disaster earlier this week. It was better tonight, but still, you know, room to grow, still some explosive chunk plays that they're giving up, not hitting the right gaps, and certainly secondary a part of that as well. But, you know, that position is just going to be just kind of make it through week by week, it feels like. But I think it was important that they needed to stop rotating so much. Like whoever you were going to pick, let them build a little bit of a rhythm, and I thought French and Hughes were able to do that a little bit more tonight. Now again, it is Wyoming, so you take that with a grain of salt. Secondary-wise, 3 PIs, I believe four first downs of Wyoming's 20 were allowed via penalty, 3 of them pass interference-wise, a couple on Preston Hodge. You know, McKinney gave some up tonight, and, you know, Colorado definitely gave up some chunk plays. And I asked Coach Prime after the game about Colorado's defense. You know, he said, well, defense. Oh, so now you're going to start to pick apart defense. And I do think that he was reading that I was for some reason being critical, which I wasn't. But I know that he can't possibly be happy with their overall defensive performance through 4 weeks, and he wasn't. After, you know, giving me a little bit of a hard time for just asking a question, he explained how, look, defensively they have to be better. They're giving up too many explosive chunk plays, and without those, they're doing pretty well. So they got to find a way to tighten that down. Now, obviously, easier said than done. More about being sound, being fundamentally responsible, being in your gap, right? And I think that's a work in progress. Certainly, it's going to be tested here the next 4 weeks. I mean, BYU's got a good running game. Freshman quarterback. Did get his first win on the road this week, and they did get that first road game out of the way before they come here next Saturday night. However, obviously, the price of poker continues to go up and up and up and up. And I just think that there's still tons to work on. Like tonight, they went with Ivan Yates as a safety. They took a linebacker off the field on 3rd downs. Certain situations, I think they changed things up a little bit, kind of went away from John Slaughter. He had a really rough game last week, so they went with it that way. Carter Stoutmeyer had a couple of nice plays, but also, you know, missing some tackles still. He is definitely underwhelmed a little bit, unfortunately. You know, I think it's just an overall, like, week-by-week process of just trying to be better than you were the week before for this defensive unit. It's probably the bigger disappointment of this team overall so far. I thought this was going to be a defense that was going to be capable of winning games on that side of the ball. I don't know that they are. From what we watched tonight, this was the best version of Colorado's offense that we've seen so far, albeit a little bit disjointed first half to second half. Felt like tonight they really took their foot off the gas a little bit too early for my taste. Coach Prime felt the same way, but either way, you know, offensively, if they're going to be able to throw it like they did tonight, then I think that's a good sign moving forward, because you're going to have to be able to be versatile in your attack. And it felt like up until this point, Colorado really struggled to kind of string all 3 phases, you know, longer, intermediate, short, of their offensive attack together. And they did tonight, for sure. Obviously, you know, competition is going to get better, and that's going to be a bigger challenge. Running back-wise, Simeon Price rolled his ankle. Coach Prime had to help him off the field, which is a bummer, because I think he only touched the ball twice tonight. The one thing that I expected them to do tonight that they just did not was really be deliberate at a certain point in time in trying to get some sort of rhythm with their ground game. Now, having the running quarterback makes a whole lot of a difference, and makes a big difference. Kaidon almost with 100 yards himself tonight, but outside of that, did not run the football all that well and not all that consistently. They did hit one with Micah. If he holds on to it, it looks, you know, a little bit better, but you know, I just think overall, from on a down-to-down basis, like there wasn't any consecutive runs. It felt like tonight they really didn't work on stringing them together. I thought in the second half they could have done a better job at kind of bleeding some of that clock, but I did like the fact that they continued to air it out, and they went with what worked, but it just felt like from a running perspective, you were going to need to build some cohesion there, and this was a good night to do it in the second half. Weren't able to get it done. DeKalen Taylor a little bit gimpy coming off the field at one point tonight, and then I think overall you look at some of the other things that they did in the running game, they're getting better. It's just not a finished product yet. So overall, like I've been saying the last couple of weeks, you've got to celebrate the wins as they come this year. I mean, it's never going to be a situation where, you know, it's all of a sudden going to be really smooth, but one at a time. And you do have more to look forward to and more hope heading into the BYU game next week. Again, you just got to clean up, you know, still continue to work and clean up some big areas, but the one that you were most concerned about was quarterback coming into tonight, and it looks like that has been, at least for now, solved, which is a good thing. Omarion Miller, very nice night, did have one drop, but outside of that, had a touchdown. very good awareness by him not to get rung up on the uprights. Sincere Brown, man, can that kid run. Got to continue to find ways to get the ball into his hands. Really nice touchdown up the sideline. I loved how Salter waited and waited for that route to come open and finally hit one of those touch throws. It's probably the first one he's hit so far, which was good to see. So overall, 37-20. Very big win for the Buffs tonight. Tons to get to moving forward, and certainly I'll have more stuff out this weekend. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Right now it's, I think, 1:30, so I'm going to get out of here. Again, like and subscribe, and make sure you hype. I mean, just hype me up just a little bit. Matt Smith from Folsom Field. Appreciate you for tuning in.